record the attendance. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest at this point? Anybody? Thank you, Ken. all current, eh? So we'll need approval of the agenda. I just want to ask a question. Were there any additions or deletions? No. Okay. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Jeff, as I understand it, the business is a presentation of the Financial Condition Index.
Right. Okay, so really the purpose of the meeting today is to just run through the Financial Condition Index that has been created by the province in cooperation with UNSM and AMA. And excuse me a second. Okay, so AMA, the municipal administrators, the UNSM, the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities, and the province of Nova Scotia worked for, I'm going to say, about 4 years on this Financial Condition Index. The purpose of it really, I think, initially was to create some comparable...
There's just a picture of me there. Do you want to fix it so I'm not on the only one? I'm sorry, Jeff.
We can do that right here with these buttons. Buttons right here. So you want the presentation, press that, and give it about 3 seconds, and we'll come up there. Here. And
now you're going to. Okay.
Okay. As far as the indicators go, I'll have Linda load the presentation onto our website. So if anybody wants to view the slides and hear the presentation, they can do so without us necessarily adjusting the camera here. So the slides I'll be talking about in a few minutes will be attached to the agenda that is today's meeting, and there'll be a link to the video as well.
I've had a couple of people, Jeff, speak to me about this because it's been referred to in the Chronicle Herald.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So that's really the purpose of today's meeting, is that officially on Thursday, the final Financial Condition Index will be released. Now, we have, for the last 3 years in the town of Yarmouth, we've received our draft Financial Condition Index, and we've used it in our budget presentations, our pre-budget presentations, each of the last 3 years. Even though they've been in technically draft form, we think they've provided us good enough information to help us understand the context in which we're working. But we've never had access to anybody else's Financial Condition Index. What they've done over the last 3 years is they just simply sent them directly to each municipality for information, but never put them all together, never given us anybody else's to look at. So Thursday will be the first time that anybody, including CAOs, councillors, and the general public, the first time anybody has seen everybody's Financial Condition Index. And so
we could compare ourselves to, say, Lockport or...
Well, that's obviously what's going to happen is people are going to start looking and comparing. We'll want to see how other towns our size are faring on these indexes. We'll look at where they're doing better than us and where they're maybe not doing as well, and the questions will start. I expect, as we saw today in the Chronicle Herald, Michael Gorman wrote a piece about the Financial Condition Index. I think Jerry has it there. And it refers to 10 or 11 towns in the province of Nova Scotia that are in some form of financial trouble. Now, when the indicators come out, it may be clear where the troubles are. We don't know because we haven't seen them yet. But those kinds of comparisons and observations will be made. The media will be reporting. And so the purpose of today's meeting is really to just go over the FCI, Financial Condition Index, with you folks, so that if you have any questions, come to you from the person you meet on the street over the next days, weeks, months, that you may be able to help them understand the index and perhaps why the town of Yarmouth's numbers are what they are. So if Joe Q. Public is making comparisons and doesn't understand why the town of Yarmouth's numbers are this way or that way, you may be able to inform them right there, help them gain a little insight, and I expect that the media will be reporting, putting their perspective on it, and I guess the better you understand our reality, I think the better you'll be able to respond to citizens. So I'd like to keep this, if we could, fairly conversational, so that if there are elements of the financial condition index that you have questions about, just fire away at any time. My intention is just simply to walk through it, to explain to you, try to explain to you what each indicator is, tell you why we think it is what it is for the town of Yarmouth, and if you have any questions, like I say, ask.
So we should use the microphones?
Just so I am streaming and recording, and so this you'll be able to refer people to as well, or refer back to yourself over the next few weeks or so. If you get questions about a particular indicator, you can come back to our conversation today online if you wish, or you can refer people to it if you think that it might help them understand.
Sure. And the other comment, some of us, when I heard from a couple of citizens who have viewed the program, can't always hear us. So as Peter Muse said a long time ago. So Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. So if you recall from my presentation back, I believe it was in February, I included a slide much like this. And so this came directly from the financial condition indicators. This year it looked like this. In years past it looked more like speedometers, I believe. Any case, this is the final set of revenue indicators for the town of Yarmouth. And I'll just walk through them. I have the technical definitions here that I can refer to, and I did send those out in an email to council. Those two will be attached to the agenda for today so that citizens can read through those as well. So a lot of the information that goes into these indicators comes from two sources. One of them we call the FIR, or the Financial Information Return. So that is the set of numbers that Mr. Varon provides to the province online through a through a spreadsheet that they provide.
Yeah, it's basically a summary of our audited statement. They follow our audited statement, put them in a format that the province wants to see.
Yeah, and so what that does, it allows them to put things in a standardized format. So our financial information return, every municipality does it. They tell you what to put in each line, kind of thing, and then they can make their comparison. So that is one piece of data that they use. The other one is our statement of estimates, which is our budget. And the same process is that the province requires every municipality to fill out the statement of estimates in the same format. They receive it, and it creates some comparability. So those are two key pieces, and why for a couple of years these have been in draft. And up until even a couple of months ago, the province has been working with municipalities to ensure that the information that was going into them through these interfaces was in fact as it was supposed to be. So as municipalities looked at these numbers, scratched their heads and said, why is ours like that? Some of the I guess discrepancies in the numbers became apparent, and they were able to refine to get to where we are today. So let me start with going through these and see how we make out. The first first set of indicators are on what they call the revenue dimension. So there are 5 indicators about our sources of revenue. The first one is reliance on government transfers. So government transfers are funds that we would receive from either the province or the federal government. They can be conditional or they can be unconditional. They can come with no strings attached, or they could be conditional grants that come with certain requirements that we need to meet. The town of Yarmouth score is 3.9. The town average is 11, and the threshold was set at 15. So I should have mentioned these numbers are 2011 numbers. Okay, so these are 3 years old, but it is the most current year that the province has put it all together. Hopefully, as time goes on, the indicators become more current, because Frankly, as we look at our taxes receivable as an example, we've made some steps on that to bring our number down, but this is 2011, so it's a couple years out of date. So as people look at this, look at these indicators when they come out, there's going to be some discussion, but it's discussion about the status of towns almost 3 years ago. So it's a little unfortunate that it's that out of date, but hopefully going forward, they'll catch up a year perhaps and be a little more relevant. Go ahead.
Two questions. One, do we have to?
It would be great if you did, yeah. It would be great if you did, yeah.
Okay, I'm on. Thank you. Now my second question. The average is based on what, 3 years or 5 years? Because here, these numbers are, these are 2011 numbers, yet further down in the debt and capital dimension sector, we have 5-year capital purchases as well as under contributions to capital reserve. So what is the average based on, 3 years or 5 years, or how many years? Thank you.
I think in, excuse me, I think in this one it is 1 year, but it is the average of all the towns for that year. Let me
Town
just,
average?
average of all the towns. So our comparable group is the 30 towns in the province of Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
So the average town would be at 11%,
Just for that 1 year?
just for that 1 year.
All right, thank you.
Let me just refer to the technical definition. The formula they use is total government transfers divided by total revenue. So total government transfers is the sum of unconditional and conditional transfers received from federal, provincial, or local governments, and there's specific lines from the financial information return. Total revenue is taxes collected. Now, it is net of appropriations to the regional school board. So we collect over $1 million for the regional school board. That is subtracted out of total revenue before they do the calculation. So even though we tax it, right, even though we have to tax for that, on this dimension, they subtract that out. They also subtract out services provided to other governments, sales of services, or other revenue from owned sources, and operating transfers from all levels of government. Sorry, those things are added in. It's total taxes collected minus the school board, but plus services provided to other governments, sales of services, and other revenue from owned sources, and operating transfers. So what it's meant to do is give you an indication of your financial independence. If you're too high on this dimension, you may be too dependent upon other levels of government for your operations. And just as an example, I recall in one presentation that I saw, the town of Canso was somewhere close to 30%. Okay, so that is an indicator of an issue, right? Now, in our case, 3.9%, you might look at it and it's in green, but you might look at it and say, well, maybe we should be getting more. Maybe we should be tapping more money from federal and provincial sources. Maybe we're not doing enough on that end. So it's green, meaning we are quite independent, but you know.
Jeff, when you talk about total monies that come in from provincial and federal governments, say we did something like a few years ago, the Build Canada Fund on Pleasant Street. Would that skew the numbers at all, or is that
No.
totally separate and above?
That's separate and above. This refers to operating.
Okay.
This is about operating funds as opposed to capital.
Yeah.
So funds that we would receive, for instance, and this probably doesn't show up on ours, but we are in a joint deal with the municipality of Yarmouth to do the physical activity coordinator project. So that money comes into the municipality of Yarmouth, even though it is a joint partnership. So there's probably no recognition of that revenue in our number, and all of it in their number.
What about fire service?
In total revenue, the money we receive from the municipality would be in there, but we don't receive any transfer from the province on fire services. So yeah, it would count on our total revenue, but not on our transfers, reliance on transfers. If that makes any sense? Okay. All right, uncollected taxes, you can see we're at 9.9. The yellow means that we're above the town average, but still below the threshold. So if you're in that spot that you're above average but below the threshold, you get yellow. So in 2011, our uncollected taxes were 9.9%. The town average was 9.7, and the threshold was 10. So you can see that most towns were flirting very close to the line, 10%. We certainly were, but as you know, we've made some policy changes since 2011, and we've upped our efforts in terms of tax collection to bring our number down because we felt that was very high. So it is coming down. We don't have for you today a current number in terms of what that looks like, but you know, we can produce something. And again, it's a snapshot in time, and so this was taken, this is based on the financial information returns. So this is the March 31st number, right? So you're at the end of your fiscal year, you've done 2 tax bills that year, and you're at the very last day of the year when this number's taken. So if we were looking at it today, it would be much higher because tax bills have gone out, and not everybody's been in to pay, of course, because interest hasn't started to be a problem. 3-year change in tax base. Excuse me. So what they're looking for here is the town threshold is set as the cumulative CPI for the 3 years. So 8.4% would have been the accumulation of CPI for 2009, 10, and 11. And what they did is they looked at the change in our tax base over those same 3 years, as well as looking at the town average. So CPI was 8.4%. Town average for increase in tax base was 5.4%, and ours was 2.6. I don't think anybody around this table would be shocked to see that we're below the average on that, given those particular 3 years and what was going on in this community. Things were not booming, and so it's red. It is, it's in the revenue dimension because obviously tax base is of huge importance to our revenue. However, it is an outside measure. It's a metric of something going on outside that we can't control, but certainly it's one of our priorities to increase the tax base. And so, again, our efforts going forward are to accelerate the pace in terms of growth of tax base. And this indicator simply tells you what you already know, is how important that is to the town. Any questions on that one? Okay. Commercial property assessment as a percentage of overall assessment. So, town of Yarmouth, 34.4%.
Sorry, I was just wondering if our tax base, this included residential and commercial.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so that is, I believe what they use there is uniform assessment, so it's taxable assessment, and that is both commercial and residential.
Okay.
Okay, so commercial property assessment, this is the percentage of the of your total uniform assessment that comes from commercial versus residential. In towns, it is expected to be more than in rurals or regionals. Rurals are expected to be at 10%, regionals at 15%, and towns at 20%. We're at 34.4%, which indicates we have a strong commercial tax base in terms of our overall mix of residential and commercial. Town average is only 23.1, so we're, in terms of a percentage of our overall assessment base, we're stronger on the commercial side than most towns. Keep in mind, and again, this is 2011, in 2011, we had experienced a couple years of decline in our overall commercial assessment base, and residential was still increasing. This year, 2014, commercial actually took a slight uptick the first time in about 5 years, and residential leveled off completely. So, you know, there has been some changes in that ratio. Probably not significant in terms of the percentages, but we keep a close eye on that every year when we do our sort of pre-budget work, because that's of concern. Reliance on a single business / institution. So this is how much are you dependent on that one business. There are situations like Hansport, they've had one or two businesses close there, major employers, and that has upset their apple cart. Same thing happened in Canso, I believe. So if you're a small town and you're too reliant on one business, then any risk that business is experiencing translates directly to the town and your ability to provide services. So the town threshold is 10%, the town average is 7.2, and we're at 4.7. So what that tells me is that in terms of our reliance on a single business or institution, we're pretty well diversified. We don't have that single business that is floating the town, which I guess to a certain extent mitigates our risk of not being able to provide services if a single business goes under. However, I will say that I think most of you will probably agree that there is a very heavy dependence on one industry in this town. So it may be several businesses, several different taxpayers, but there is one industry that we are heavily dependent on. And if something goes bad in that industry, then certainly it could affect our town. That wouldn't be, you wouldn't know that by looking at that indicator, but just knowing the community and our economy, you know that intuitively. So the indicators are not a perfect picture of what's going on in a town or municipality, but they are indicators. And so they do raise questions, or they can raise questions and be the source of some discussion. So that's, I guess, what the point is today, is to help prepare you for those discussions. Any questions, comments? Okay, we'll move along. The next set of indicators is the budget dimension. Okay, so the first one is residential tax effort. And what that is, the formula for that one is your total residential taxes divided by your dwelling units, divided by your median household income. Okay? So ours is 4.6%. Town average is 3.3. Town threshold is 4. So what this is saying is how much of the median taxpayer's household income goes to paying the average residential tax bill. And the answer in the town of Yarmouth is 4.6%. One of the things, there's a couple things that play into this, and just because we had the numbers, we did a little arithmetic. Further on in this presentation, you'll see that the median household income in the town of Yarmouth is well below the town average. If I can just flip ahead to show you that one, I'll come right back. Okay, if you look at the second row here, median household income, town of Yarmouth is $34,572, whereas the town average is $45,682. So it's almost near 20 to 25% lower. Okay, go back. If the median household income in the town of Yarmouth was the same as the average town, then we'd be below the town average for this dimension. So what's driving our residential tax effort to be higher is not the tax burden that the average residential unit has, but it's their income that they have to pay it. So that's an issue. There is the level of wealth in the community on average is below average. So it's to be concerned about. The difficulty that we have, and every town has this, is that we have the same standards for wastewater treatment, for policing, for fire protection, for services that every other town and city has. And how to provide those services as cost effectively as possible in order to keep these numbers within reason is the challenge. And we can't control the median household income, though we try to affect it through economic development investments, right? That's the point, is to create wealth in the community, create jobs, better paying jobs. The more government paying jobs that you have, or the more large employers that you have, typically the higher the median household income will be in your community. go back to the dimension that says our largest taxpayer is something like 4.7%. We don't have a single large employer. Now, typically in those situations, they might be unionized, right? Which might lead to higher wages. We do have a large employer on the Hill, the hospital. Some good paying jobs there. They don't all live in the town, of course. Anyway, this is a dimension that you'll probably get some questions about. We're slightly above the town threshold, and the source of that is on the income side. Our residential tax rate, when we've lined up the 30 towns in the province of Nova Scotia, our tax rate is right smack in the middle. So that it is what it is. Deficits in the last 5 years. We have a little difficulty with this, but the town threshold is 1. The town average is 1, and we've had 1. The difficulty we have with that, or I have with it, is that, and we've talked about this many times, is that our amortization, our depreciation, is within our budget. Right? So when the province and the accounting standards organization decided that we had to record the expense of our infrastructure that we use up every year. So we pave a street, and if the life expectancy of that is 20 years, we have to expense 1/20th of that paving every year in our financial statements. What the province allows everyone else to do is, before they calculate whether they've had a deficit or a surplus, they're allowed to remove that depreciation expense to get to their bottom line. In the town of Yarmouth's case, we aren't allowed to remove it because we budget for our amortization. We rate for it, we collect it, and we put it right back out into capital. So a concern that Jerry and I had when we talked with the provincial reps about this is, this suggests, the whole idea of having indicators suggests that you have comparability between municipalities. And when there's an indicator in there that is not calculated the same for every municipality, then you question whether or not it is a valid indicator or a valid comparison. Okay? I have no issue with the fact that we have a deficit in those 5 years. But what I don't like about it is that the comparability is not necessarily apples to apples. Okay, so that's my little rant on that one. We'll talk more about the amortization in a minute, unless there are any other questions at this point. The other thing I will say about deficits in the last 5 years is that this was at a time when we were having to, we had to begin to account for the liability for landfill closure, which we eventually did and paid for out of tipping fees. We also had to account for the unfunded liabilities within our pension plan. So up to a point in time just before this, we never had to account in our financial statements for the unfunded liability in our pension plan. Suddenly the accounting rules changed and we had to. So there were some accounting changes that occurred that impacted on this. We now, inclusive of our budget and our balanced budget, we account for the pension liabilities, and as I said, we fully funded the closure of our landfill on the Hardscratch Road. We fully funded that out of revenues that we collected from tipping fees over the life of that operation. So that worked out. No, no. It was actually remarkably a great coincidence how it worked out. We had an estimate done on what the closure costs would be. The accountants required that, and the money that we had in the fund at the time of the landfill closure, I think it was around $2 million, Jerry? Yeah, so it was $2 million was the estimate, $2 million was in the fund, and we crossed our fingers and we got it done. So, yeah. And a credit Ray Gallant for the formula that they used in setting the tipping fees, because this was in his time that they established the tipping fees and started to create that fund to pay for the closure, and he nailed it right on the money. Budget expenditure accuracy. So they want you to be within plus or minus 5% in terms of budget accuracy, expenditure accuracy. Town average is 3.8. We were at negative 6.6, and this is in 2011. So this caused us a bit of concern because we're usually much closer than negative 6.6. So we looked into where the number came from, and there were two, I'm going to say three sources that contributed to this, and Jerry can clarify if I get it wrong. First of all, there was a keying error in one of our reports to the province. We put in, I think we said we were expecting to spend 30,000. It was actually 300,000. So we create a variance there when we actually spent 300,000 on a budget of 30.
But we had the money.
Yeah. The other one was in the amortization expense. We actually recorded an expense $600,000 more than what we had in the budget. Again, this was around the time when we were first doing the tangible capital assets thing. As far as our projection on what that number would be, we were off. Did we have the money? Pretty much so. The other thing about this that isn't captured is if you receive money that you weren't expecting and you spend it, because this is only looking at the expenditure side, it isn't balanced off. So if you received $100,000 to do something or $1 million and you didn't expect to receive it and you spent it, well, it looks bad because your budget, you overspent compared to budget. So the negative 6.6 is awfully hard to identify. The final comment on this is if you take our audited financial statements and you look at where we ended up that year versus what our budget was, I think our budget was something like a $15,000 surplus, and we ended up with like a $100,000 deficit. Well, that isn't 6.6%. It's a fraction of 1%. But because of the things that they take out and the way they calculate the formula, the percentage is quite a bit higher than what anybody would expect when you actually look at the financial statements. Did I get those numbers pretty close? Any questions on that one? And
So if someone asks us, then we can explain it more simply than what you said, perhaps by saying that we've supplied incorrect information.
in one instance, there was about $270,000 variance because of a keying error. But I would give people the financial statements. This is 2011. We can give them the financial statements if they want to see the details of this. But you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a 6.6% miss.
So that's an anomaly then.
Another big piece, I redid the calculation, so another big piece is how we, because of the first couple years of how we recorded our depreciation and how we budgeted our depreciation. We budgeted depreciation as depreciation expense, but then when we actually spent the money, we used capital revenue. So when I redid the calculation, allowing for the keying error and changing the where we line up our depreciation as opposed to where we actually expense the money, our number ends up being 3.07%, which is within the threshold number. But by the time we get around to doing this, it was after the process deadline, and they won't change the number because the commission has.
So Jerry just sort of hit on something there that I think you should also know is that we've been funding a lot of capital out of our budget for 8 years now, in the area of a couple $1 million, some years more than that, directly out of tax revenue. When the accounting standards changed and the province required us to record our amortization, how we manage that money changed. We went from going capital out of revenue to now moving amortization money into the capital fund and spending on capital out of the capital fund. And so that's part of how we budgeted, which line we put the money on, and where we spent it from. I think we've got it. I think we've got all the. We've got all the wrinkles worked out, but it did take a little bit of time, and we worked very closely with Gloria Banks, obviously, on getting this right. Gloria was actually hired, contracted by the province to work with them on the implementation of the PSAP, the public sector accounting standards, working with them in the implementation. So there was no better expert in the province for us to have access to than Gloria, and so we have worked with her on this, and obviously continue to work with her as the auditor.
Madeline?
Thank you, Jim. Well, that just answered, thank you, Jerry, you just answered one of my questions. Because I assume that every year after that, like if we looked at last year's and the year before, next year we look at this year, our numbers are going to be much improved, are they not?
Yes.
So in essence, this minus 6.6 is really actually 3.07?
Yes.
All right, thank you, because this is something that you may, I don't know, I'm going to ask my colleagues at the end of this, if we would ask you to just give us a quick review of that particular portion of this before we all go home, because these are two areas that I'm sure we're going to get queries on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so liquidity. Liquidity is your total short-term operating assets divided by your total short-term operating liabilities. And the ratio they're looking for is anything above 1, which means you can meet your short-term obligations with your short-term assets. Town average is 1.5. We're at 2.1, so we're quite liquid. Operating reserves. Town threshold is 5. Town average is 8, and we're at 15.2. Yeah, and it's actually a little bit surprising to Jerry and I to see the town average where it is, frankly, on the basis that, you know, we talk to our auditors. That's one of the questions we always ask is how much should we have in reserve? And we're always counseled that you want to be able to operate for a couple months, perhaps, you know, out of your reserves if you had to. And just 2 months? Yeah. So anyway, there we are. We're in good shape there. So these are this is a good page. If you can, focus people on this page. It's all green. This is our debt and capital dimension. Okay, so we do well here, and this is I'll just go through it. Debt service percentage. So that's the, let's get to the right page here. Principal and interest payments paid on long-term debt divided by your total own source revenue. So the town threshold is 15%. And that used to be a hard line, actually, within the province. You could not go above 15%. I think it's a soft line now. I think you can go above 15%, but you may need ministerial approval. Town average is 7.4%. Town Yarmouth's at 5%. And since 2011, we've actually, that number's reduced more. We've ended some term debt that we had. Yeah, so that one's come down even further. The outstanding debt percent, and I'll just tell you percent of what. Total outstanding long-term debt divided by uniform assessment, total uniform assessment. So this is your outstanding long-term debt as a percentage of your assessment, total uniform assessment. We're saying it should be below 3.5. Town average is 1.3. We're at 1.1, so we're not too far from the average, but on the right side of it. Undepreciated assets. So town threshold is 60%. So what that means is how much of the assets that you have on your books is undepreciated, yet to be used up. So 60% says that, you know, we've more life left in our assets than we've already used. That's a pretty reasonable threshold, perhaps. Town average is pretty close to that at 58.6. We're at 69.1 in 2011, and again, I'd suggest that that number has continued to climb because of the investment that we make in our tangible capital assets out of our amortization fund every year. There's no other town that is fully funding their amortization. So it makes sense to me that we're making more headway on this as a percentage of our overall assets than anybody else. So that is something that we should be particularly proud of. It is one of the reasons that our outstanding debt is low and that our debt service costs are low. So it's good news. 5-year capital purchases as a percent. So as a percentage of what? Total purchases of capital assets over a 5-year period divided by total depreciation accrued over the same 5-year period. So over the 5-year period, we invested more than double the amount of amortization that we incurred over that 5 years. So if we incurred, let's say, $8 million in depreciation, we spent 16 on capital. Town average was 211, which Jerry and I found a little bit surprising. However, this doesn't necessarily speak to the source of the money, and it is an average. So I say we're a little surprised by how high the town average is, given that people are not funding their amortization, but it is what it is. And we think that our number going forward we expect, and we'll see, time will tell, but we think our number will continue to be far above the average. 5-year contributions to capital reserves. The town threshold is 10, town average is 13.8, and we're at 19.4. So here's a little bit of information. This comes out with the indicators, a little bit of information about our town. It helps to put it in context. How do we compare to other towns? Because all of these town averages and thresholds are based on all these other towns. So what do they look like compared to us? Well, we have twice as many dwelling units as the average town. Okay? We are the 5th largest town in Nova Scotia out of 30. Okay? So we are larger than average, twice the average. In terms of geographic area, we aren't twice as big geographically, but we are slightly larger. Total municipal operating budget for next fiscal year. Our operating budget, 17 million. The town average, 6.6 million. So again, we have a bigger operation than the average town. And bear in mind as well, there's a lot of things that we do where the only part of it that's reflected in our budget is our share of an intermunicipal agreement. So in the case of, use WasteCheck as an example, in 2011, I think we put in $8,000 into a probably $400,000 operation. Right? So our operating number here only includes our share. Taxable property assessment, we're slightly more than double the average town. And size of council, the average is 6, so I would suggest that most councils are either 5 or 7, and we happen to be on the 7th side. Okay, so revenue sources, and I confess to have not spent a lot of time poring over these particular pie charts. I guess the other revenue from own sources in the town of Yarmouth is much larger than other towns. That's the one that's sort of that green color at 12%, where other towns are at 4%. We do seem to be a lot smaller on the unconditional transfers, and I can't say that I have any insights into that for you. But anyway, those pie charts. Any questions? Sorry? Municipal spending. So here's where we spend the money that we collect, and again, these are percentages, and so any increase in one section of this pie is going to result in a decrease in the other sections, and so it's a little difficult to interpret. I did notice in here, however, environmental development on our side is that sliver that is 11%, as compared to 4 in the town average. One of the comments I would make on that is environmental development is where a lot of the money is budgeted that goes into the partnerships that we have. And I would suggest that this may be an indication of the fact that we partner on more things than some other units. Okay? But again, it's trying to draw something out of this chart to make sense of it. Demographics, no surprise here. Town of Yarmouth population has decreased, where the town average has remained fairly stable. I think there's a slight decrease there, but our population has decreased a little more than the average. The age profile. This one's a little hard to look at, but or at least to make sense of. But what I see in this is that in the 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and even the 20 to 24-year-olds, we're at or above the town average in terms of the percentage of our population that are within those age groups. Then for the entire working life from age 25 to 65, Town of Yarmouth has a smaller percentage of our population coming from those age groups. However, when you get to the 65 to 69, all the way up to 85 plus, Town of Yarmouth has a higher percentage of our population coming in those age groups than the average town. Now, interesting, the 0 to 4-year-olds, we also have a higher percentage of those. So.
You ever move to town, you'll have me.
That's right. Anyway, again, I don't think there's anything in here that is necessarily surprising to you, but, it's interesting always to look at these things and consider them when you're making decisions about where we're going to invest in services. Change in population. Town average population went down 2.1%. Ours went down 5.6%. We talked about the median household income already. Employment participation. So we're below the town average there. And if you remember the Ivany report, if you recall what the Ivany report had to say about participation, is they set goals for labour market participation for the province of Nova Scotia. Don't recall the number. I'm thinking 58%. In any case, we have a ways to go there. I mean, that's important that our population be participating in the labour market. There's also education beyond high school, and again, the Ivany report had a goal in that area, and I don't recall the number, but we are below the town average there as well, and so there is work to be done, I guess, in terms of improving those numbers. So a few final thoughts. Indicators tell some of the story, but not all of it. And I think it's important to remind the public that these are about 15 financial indicators that have been developed by the province, but they don't tell the whole story. They don't talk about the goals, priorities, the governance, and so I think there's an important part to engage in the discussion with the public and with the media about the indicators and trying to tell the rest of the story. It is retrospective, these indicators. They're 2011 data, which means they're 3 years old, and as we know, we have taken some steps, begin to take some steps on some of the indicators already. I think one of the things that we can feel somewhat good about is the low reliance on government transfers or a single taxpayer. In other words, our risk is somewhat diversified, although, as I mentioned, I think there's one industry that we are heavily dependent on. Funding our amortization puts us above average on every debt and capital dimension indicator. And I believe, and it's just me personally, but I believe that what the town of Yarmouth has been doing for the last 8 years in terms of our capital and amortization is a practice that we should be proud of and that we should continue, and we should urge others to follow our lead, because I think it helps to make us a more sustainable town. We have, in towns, you have a high dependence on the infrastructure, whether it's water, wastewater, streets, whatnot, and keeping it up is important. If you've traveled to some other towns in this province this spring and bumped across their roads, and I feel really good about the condition of our roads. They aren't perfect, but you know what? By comparison, they're not bad. We invest $1.2 million from our budget, and this is mostly in the environmental development area, $1.2 million into 13 different partnerships with other municipalities in the county. And those partnerships create over $8 million in municipal services. So that's pretty good leveraging.
Okay.
On top of that, we sell another 1.1 million in services to neighboring municipalities. So I differentiate between sales of services and partnerships. The fire department, as an example, is a sale of service. It's not a partnership. We operate it, we manage it, it's our department, but we sell the service to a neighboring municipality. So we generate 1.1 million through sale of service. We invest 1.2 million in partnerships. Uncollected taxes are addressed through policy, as we know, and we'll update you we'll update you on our March 31st numbers as the audit is completed, and hopefully we look to see a number below the 9.9 that we saw in 2011. And priorities of council, and I ran out of time on this slide, but increasing the tax base was obviously a priority that we talked about and need to focus on in terms of the town. That's clearly indicated in these slides as something that we need to be concerned about. So I feel the council is, excuse me, is on track, properly focused, and I think there are things we need to be concerned about and diligent about. But as a town, I don't feel that when the indicators come out, I think by comparison, I think we'll be in a pretty good place.
Thank you very much. Ken, I was listening to CBC FM this morning, and there was a reporter, and I don't know, like yourself, who was from another part of the province, and she made a positive comment about what the last 2 items, or 3 items, Jeff, in your presentation, about Yarmouth County. I don't know whether you heard that or not, but yeah. But anyway, I was just about the investing in the partnerships, Jeff, and.
Yeah, I didn't hear it either, but I did hear about it. That I think it was in the Kings County area, and they somehow made reference to the partnering that happens down here. So
yeah, I think yes, that's right. Yeah, I didn't hear the detail at that point. I think that's very good. Thank you very, very much, Jeff and Jerry. A lot of work. Ken.
No, I think it'd be me.
sorry.
I'll go first.
All right.
Now, the thing, what's going to happen in the public is I think that people are going to pick it apart. And you said there's 15 financial indicators. Is you got to look at the overall picture of where we are. And I think, in spite of the economic times and how some of the assessments have fallen flat, I think we've done a remarkable job. And like Jim said, Jeff and Jerry have done excellent job. And I know the predecessors, the council before and the council before, and just you said that the work that former CAO, your predecessor Ray Gallant did just on that $2 million setting aside for tipping fees to close the landfill is, excellent work. And I think the thing that we have to do at this council table is just keep reminding ourselves there's going to be people sitting in these chairs 15 years from now. And Jim, that could be me and you again, who knows? But we'll come back every 15 or 20 years. But I think that's the thing we have to remind people. And Yarmouth is looked as a template for working together with other municipal units. I know we have to do it more, and people talk about amalgamated government, and I've heard Councillor Langell say it 100 times, is for all intensive purposes, we are an amalgamated council with just different regions. And I'd like to thank you, Jeff, for the work you've done. And I'd like to see this presentation. I know I've had some comments when you did an overview of this a month or 2 ago, 2 months ago, or 3 months ago. I had some positive comments. But I'd like to see this at a bigger form, even maybe not this council meeting because the numbers come out, but maybe next council meeting, if you could do maybe just a shorter overview of the same presentation for the public. And I know we're not going to have people coming flocking in the audience to see this, but if it's talked about during a regular council meeting, I think every bit of information we get out to the public, and especially that point with the where the variance was, between the -6 and what we came up with the recalculated numbers at 3, and we'd be within the variance. I think that's an important indicator because people are going to be looking for those things that make us stand out or not as good as other towns. So I think that's an important point, and I'd like to see this, maybe not this council meeting, but the next one, just go over the indicators again. And there's going to be some comments and questions over the next month before this happens again. So it might be a great opportunity for the public to really look at it. And we're going to be posed questions, so something that we could give to you. Thank you, Jeff.
Ken.
Thanks, Jim. First of all, I wanted to comment that I wanted to thank Jeff not only for what he did here, but his role on the provincial committee, which I noticed at UNSM. Very pleased, Jeff, and I know you weren't able to make it, but that was a very impressive presentation they gave. And personally, I think our nomination of you for that was extremely well done, and I think you did one heck of a job because you were at the inside track. I agree with Phil. One thing at the spring workshop that was kind of interesting, Barry McGregor made a comment on Facebook. Not that I'm on Facebook a lot. I should be like Danny and get off it altogether. I like the cartoon the other day. I saw that posting is really boasting. And I never thought of it that way. It was a really interesting cartoon that if you post, you're actually boasting. It should be called boasting, not posting. So you kind of look at that as, okay. But the comment that one of the things that Barry said, we should each bring back something from UNSM, and there were several things I did bring back. But one thing I did like, talking to Don Down, Phil and I had a breakfast with Don one morning with Danny, and Don Down commented that in Lunenburg County they are having a number of town hall meetings for things like this. And that's something that we should, I know it was brought up before, was to do like information session just before a council meeting, whatever, open. But the idea of having maybe 2, maybe 3 town hall meetings a year where you open it up to the general population to come in, and not an agenda as such, but just a general come in, your concern. Yesterday I met a very dear friend of Jeff's, Mr. Garnet Horton, who wanted to come and speak to council. And I'm thinking, well, there's a good golden opportunity for that. And this indicator thing would be an excellent kickoff to something like that, because I think what here is very, very interesting in the explanation, give people a chance to dialogue and they leave with a clear picture, because we're not, unfortunately, that strong in communications yet. We've got to get this communications cleaned up so that the public can see exactly where. It's very selective. The media is fickle. I mean, the media will pick the topic of the day or the treat of the week and will go with that, and that's what media does. But on the other hand, the idea of having an upfront discussion would be something really worthwhile. So I'd like to see us explore that, if at all humanly possible, to look at a possible town hall meeting in the future. And use this as an information item, and if 5 people show up, fine. If nobody shows up, fine too. But I'm really excited about these numbers. I mean, I know some of our sister units are not in the greatest of shape. I mean sister towns. I'm not referring to municipal unit, to rural units, but I'm talking about sister towns. Would be envious for some of these numbers. So I think it was well done. So thank you, Jeff.
Madeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I enjoy letting my colleagues go ahead of me, because afterwards I can just say ditto. Thank you very much, both of you. You did a lot of work, and appreciated also you going through this. I think it was in February. I watched it when it was streamed. And pardon me, I watched it with a lot of interest and enthusiasm. And thanks also, you emailed it to me. That helped when this was presented at the UNSM last week. It helped a lot.
Great.
And your name was up there on living color up on the board a couple of times, and I'm not just speaking for myself. I am now going to speak for all my colleagues that were up there. We were pretty proud of the fact that your name was up there, and for all the work that you put into it.
Well, I'll just comment on that I was a member of the AMA committee on the indicators, but it is awfully difficult to participate in provincial committees from Yarmouth. The demands of the work here make it awfully difficult to justify going to Halifax for meetings for a couple of hours. And so my participation was limited to basically Skype participation in the meetings, and obviously providing feedback and thoughts to Alex Demerick, was the staff person working on this for most of it, outside of the meetings as well. So it was good for me. I love data and I love numbers. So when I found out about this initiative, I got involved because I wanted it for the town. And so that's why I've been using it for 3 years now in our pre-budget presentations. Even though it was in draft, I feel it was telling us something. And so it is important. I just wish that, that the technology for remote meetings was being embraced more broadly, so that people like Jerry, myself, and other staff that we have who have a lot to offer could be more involved in provincial committees. A lot of people put a lot of work into this, and my contribution was, not huge.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And who knows, maybe that'll come in the future.
Yep, we're hoping
I'm
so.
sure, I'm sure. Now, whether you were on Skype or whether you were there in flesh and blood, it's the quality of what you contributed.
Thank you.
That comes out now. And also, if we could plan within, I don't know, when do you say, the next month? Next month and a half? Not at the June council meeting, but after the June council meeting, if we could hold a special.
Well, if I could address that, I think the media coverage on these indicators is going to happen. It's going to start on Friday, late Thursday, and there's going to be public comment as well as the media making their own analysis. So I think any later than the June council meeting, it's old news and the story's been told. I think the June council meeting might be the opportunity to, if you want to do that, to have this presentation at a council meeting and have discussion. I think some members of the public might show up because of what may be written, right? And that would give us a chance.
Yeah, do you want a motion on that?
Sure.
I would make the motion. Do I need to be on? Am I on now?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yes, I would make that motion. Do you have that, Linda, or do you want? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So you're looking
Like, could I have a seconder?
for a presentation of Jeff's presentation at the June council meeting?
At the June council, yes, and as a open to the public, not really, public participation?
I would do it as a presentation to council, and then if you wish to open the floor for questions and comments, then I'll have Jerry come in for that meeting to assist. But we can take questions from the public. I think we know this stuff pretty good.
Good. Thank you very much. And also, are you before we say goodbye to one another, are you going to give us just a brief review on
Yep, I will.
Let's get the, I'm going to handle that. Ken, you going to second that motion, Ken,
Sandy's going to second it. Number one, not to burst anyone's bubbles, but being a bit of a media hound and being involved with the media, I personally don't think we're going to raise any great controversy with our numbers. I mean, from a media, the media is going to zero in on those municipalities that are in trouble, and that's exactly what they're going to head for. If anything, Yarmouth will be praised for the position we're in. I don't think you're going to see, there's nothing negative in our numbers. A few red bars, but those red bars are meaningless in the big picture. People are going to look at the big picture. And from a reporter point of view, I suspect they're going to just glaze over Yarmouth. Yarmouth will be the least of their concerns. They're going to look at those units that are having problems. That being said, I'm looking at timing. We meet on the 15th, and that council meeting that Councillor Dawes is suggesting, unless we're moving it, is June the 12th, which is almost a month away, which means it's a no-story story. You know what I mean? I personally think we should have it sooner than later to catch the momentum, because the media feeding frenzy on the indicators is going to be over in 7 days. I mean, any story has a 7-day life. Right now, the Nova Star is huge, and it's the big issue and the big treat of the week, but in a week's time, we'll be moving on to something else. And the reality is that's how media moves. And I really, personally, I would almost recommend that we have it during the Committee of the Whole on the 22nd, or whenever we're going to have it, the 29th, whenever it is. Do it at the Committee of the Whole and have it open at that point. It's just as a thought, because we're going to be a month away, Mr. Chair, and I in hearing what Jeff is saying, you could lose some momentum, and I'd hate to see that, because in a month from now, people are going to say, what's a municipal indicator? You know what I mean? They will have forgotten the whole hoofra about it. So, plus, of course, they brought it out on a Thursday, which means the media will respond on Friday, which is the absolute worst journalism day going, because it's dead by Monday. It's old news by Monday. In the Vanguards, and I'm kind of disappointed the Vanguard wasn't here today, because this would have been a golden opportunity for them in the local media to have a heads up on where we're at, and it would have been a good news story for us, but obviously they're not here. So that's Vanguard deadline is going to be they're putting pages together tomorrow, and then the good stuff is on Friday noon. Basically they've gone to bed. So we won't get that media momentum, I think, and it's just the way, nature of the beast. But I think to let the public know, and I don't think there's going to be that much public interest. I hate to say it, but I think the people in Yarmouth are going to look and say, oh, okay, that means we're not going to amalgamate, or we're not going to join Digby or Shelburne or another town, and we look in pretty good shape, and life looks good, and they're going to move on. But I think the presentation should be done in a nice, timely fashion. I like what you're doing, putting it on the web and on the internet and that sort of thing, and I think that's very positive. But personally, I'd like to see the meeting sooner. I mean, I'll support the motion by all means for the meeting, but I'd like to personally think it should be sooner than later.
Madeline.
Again? Yes, thank you. All valid points, very valid points, and I'm open. I will amend it to whatever date you feel is best.
Well,
I just feel that, even though I do agree, tomorrow's going to be yesterday's news before we even get up. However, there are folks out there that as soon as they see only just one red bar, then they're going to be up in arms and they're never going to forget about it. And the sooner that we do proactively inform them, step forward and inform them, invite them in, and explain it to them, the happier I will be.
Jeff, you have your own schedule,
So-
and
This is not, I mean, the presentation is basically ready. I'll try and be a little more polished, but, in a week's time at the regular Committee of the Whole, fine, you can do it. Whenever you want it, really. It's, the regular council meeting would get you the TV, but as you say, it's a month after the story. I think, I hope to some degree our local media, the Yarmouth County media, our radio and our newspaper, I hope they do look at the indicators and try and tell a story about it, because it's going to be told in the provincial media to some extent. It's going to be told in other areas, and our people are going to wonder. So I hope they write, and I hope that I know Pam is aware of this coming out, and she's already told them she'll speak to them about the indicators once they come out. But I don't want to just talk about the red. The red is what gets your eye, right? Because that's bad. But there's good news in here for the town of Yarmouth. And so
There's more good than bad.
Any opportunity to speak to the public about it, I think we need to put the red in context and talk about the green, because there's going to be a lot of discussion in the media about red.
enough.
So
of
I'm
that.
I'm in favor of a,
So would we,
go ahead.
would we agree, should I, I'll amend that for us to meet prior to or at the
Just
same
leave it- just
time
leave it
of the
open-ended.
committee hall on the 22nd?
I'll just carry it around with me, and you guys tell me when you want to hear it.
Just so long as we
22nd is
advertise
fine,
for the
Ken.
public to come
22nd is fine,
and join and listen.
If there's a hue and cry out there, sorry, Jim.
Ken.
Yeah, 22nd works perfectly fine for me. And again, please don't throw things at me for saying this, but here's a prime example. We really, the old communications bit. Jeff is right. We should have a release, really, or should be a release ready now that looks at the positive. I mean, I'm looking at right this screen, not that it's deliberately there, but here's a prime example of some real positive news, the 15.2 operating reserve percentage points. Yes, we've got a couple of negatives there, but those are all explainable negatives. I mean, we should be coming out with a very positive, hey, look at the good shape we're in. It's amazing what we've done. I mean, 3 years ago, we were a ruined town, and how many people have we heard that we're going to be a ghost town, ghost town, ghost town, ghost town? When in reality, and when you look, you just flip back a little, go a little on those, Jeff, just to go back to the beginning. Yeah, I mean, when you start looking at what what you have overall on these numbers, commercial property assessment 34.4. I mean, that was true 2011. There's been some changes then, but I mean, this could be wordsmithed into a very positive release, and an opportunity down in the release to mention the two other indicators that are red, and simply say, okay, this is the situation, boom and boom, nice and clean and to the point. And it's also the kind of release, and I know it's not our policy, but I think it's the kind of release that the spokesperson for the release should be Jerry and Jeff. Because they're the number crunchers. You know what I mean? It's not a political release; it's a financial release. And I hate to put that onus, and I know it's a little awkward, but I mean, in our unit, usually the mayor or one of us speak. But I really think in this one, Jeff, and I know you're not a media type on that, but I really think a crafted document that highlights the positive, and then simply the word I'm looking for is clarifies the negatives, because you gave excellent explanations here, and give that in print form, and then that should be literally in our hands as well, that we would have. You know, I fully understand what's going on. I mean, the 3-year change in tax base is a prime example. You know what I mean? There's a valid explanation for this. We lost a major segment of our tourism industry. We've had some downturns in that economy. It's explainable. You know, it's not that we're sitting here with something unexplained, and I think that's all we need to do. So just my comment, I think something crafted would be really well, and I don't mind helping with that. Not that I know much, but on the wordsmithing, I don't mind as helping in proofing or crafting or whatever, or at least working with somebody on it, not to give you guys more work, but I really feel it's something that you guys should be looking at, and that will help clarify, and that will give the media a clear document. And that's what we need, that press release, that clear document. So that was just my thought.
So there are two items on the floor. There's a motion asking for a presentation at the Council of the Whole next week, or whatever that date is. And then Ken is suggesting maybe a document that might be available to the public and maybe to us councillors, that we can work with the
I can
group.
speak to that after you deal with the motion on the presentation.
All heard the motion and the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Jeff, I think we're infringing on somebody
These
else's
folks are not
time.
interested in my presentation. They're here for a consultation with our transit consultants. So yeah, absolutely. We'll try and wrap up, hopefully. But I guess on the release, I did provide a 500-word explanation or comment to the province when they came out with the draft indicators. That does, I believe, explain a lot of what I talked about today. So every municipality had that opportunity, and so that went and will come out with the indicators. So anybody looking at the indicators will also see that. That document I can email to you, or those words I can email to you so you have them, and they capture a lot of what we talked about today more concisely. As far as a press release goes, I'd work with Pam and whoever else to do it, but I do respectfully disagree. I don't want to be in the business of issuing press releases from my office. I think that the mayor's office is where that stuff should come from. Obviously, so my relationship with the media, just so everyone is clear, I do have a relationship with the media, but it's on these terms, that I will always speak to the media about the facts behind the story in terms of numbers and that kind of thing, regulatory issues. My main condition is that I'm not quoted because I'm not the spokesperson for the town. But my interest is in the media getting the story right. So if they hear something and they want fact checking, I'm always open and available for that. But I tell them, you quote me and we're done. And so the only place they quote me from is either from this chair or that chair when I am speaking to you publicly.
Appreciate that. Ken?
So given that, I'm taking the time, the mayor is away. When is the mayor back in town?
She'll be on the boat coming in on the 16th.
That is Thursday.
Friday.
Friday.
Friday, the vessel arrives here Friday morning.
So realistically,
I'm in communication with her.
I would make a motion that staff work with the mayor to craft a press release to be released no later than 10 a.m. on Friday.
10 a.m. on Friday.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Discussion, question? All those in favor, please say aye. Contrary minded, motion carried.
Absolutely. I will send you the comments that will already come out with the indicators. I'll send that to you today so you have that.
Motion to adjourn. Ken, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks very much, Jeff.
One of the main reasons that I'm pushing for this is for both of you, especially Jerry, to clear up that 1.6.6. Get the real true number out there.
So what that is, again,
I understand it, I know it's coming through, but one of the main catalysts for me pushing to have an open forum, the community here is for you the opportunity to,
Linda, I'm not involved in this.
because you can have an entire wall of green, but you have one little red dot, and
Who's going to be here? Oh. Okay. Was that the lad that came in through here?
He wanted to meet with a few of the lawyers that are from us and just kind of get some ideas from them.
Good.
Well, I thought they would just sit around here. You do that? Oh, yeah, Jared?
You're good to go now, Jim.
Well, thank you. It's not that I want to go, it's just that it's not.
It's about how much you have to do with the sweater.
Yeah,
This is important too, but so
yeah,
is the
no.
other stuff.
Well, I was very okay today. I'm glad I came. I've been looking at them. Yeah.
Yeah. Or whatever, till 11:30.
We have bloomers and bloom at 4:30.
Right. Yeah,
It's,
the workshops are everybody.
it's for us tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, we had the steering committee this morning.
So that's 10:30 till, I say noon, but that, it can be